Hi, welcome to the Divorce Allies podcast, a podcast and video series where we dive into all things divorce. We work with you through the process of creating a settlement offer with a team of financial experts, divorce mortgage planning specialists, parenting plan coordinators, and relationship coaches. We cover all of the areas of divorce settlement process from financial to emotional well-being. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a financial mediator and business valuation expert. And we're here to talk about how to create your divorce position statement. And basically, it's your words, your divorce, and how do you position this statement that will potentially anchor the deal? So, a lot of times when we're going through this, and this should really be maybe a primer to what we're going to cover in the live session. So, there's going to be some action items at the end, some ways that you could get started today, and then be prepared to ask questions in the circle. But the reality is, most people don't even know what a position statement is. And I think if we just start there, basically, when we are looking at various cases, we need people to get a little bit of a mindset reset. Okay. And so a lot of times people will hire experts and lawyers and think that these are the leaders of the team, when in the reality, you're the leader, you're the lead negotiator. And this isn't just a process that you should take lightly, but it's also, if you really kind of settle into it, it's going to be fairly easy because you're going to start with just telling your story. And so you have to see that when you're creating this position statement, this is the beginning steps. This is kind of the lead document or the outline that's going to guide all of your experts, your attorney, the mediator, potentially even the judge if you make it to trial. And again, our goal is not necessarily go to trial. It's to prepare as if we're going to trial, but to have this sort of mock trial or test run with the mediator in mediation, or kind of try to utilize that to gain additional knowledge. So we've talked about this a lot, but the mediator isn't necessarily your friend, but they are somebody that's going to give you feedback about your case, about your position, about the merits of your evidence. And if they would, in a judge's position, side on your side of this kind of negotiation. So when we get right into it, I think just starting to understand what is in a position statement is the good first beginning phases of this. Okay. So what is a position statement in divorce mediation? It's basically a written summary of the key facts, the timeline, the financial issues in the divorce, and it gives the mediator or your attorney and the other side a very clear, calm, fact-based narrative of your settlement position without emotion, without conflict language, and it sets the tone for how your deal is going to be framed and anchored. And so that seems like a lot for just one position statement or one document. But realistically, all you're doing is trying to get everybody on the same page so that they understand the history, they understand the timeline of events, they understand what you want. That's going to be your settlement offer. And they understand some of the facts and circumstances surrounding this particular situation. And you want it in this narrative that is kind of short and sweet and to the point. So when we're first talking about this, it's usually a 1 to 2 page summary, and it's going to clearly outline all of the issues. It's kind of like the same things that you keep on repeating every time you talk to your lawyer or every time you talk to your financial expert or anybody involved in the case if you're already kind of midway through it. Everybody kind of forgets all of the key points. They may forget how many kids you have. They may have forgotten when you got married. A lot of times the date of marriage, the date of separation, these are important dates, particularly in your state. So if you're looking at this, what would we include in this position statement? Well, part of this is like a 3-step process. So if you're looking at any of this, if you are not sure what your main three issues are, then you have to start to step back a little bit. And a lot of times people are like, well, isn't this something that the attorney's going to put together? No. Why should you be the one to write this? Because nobody knows your story. Nobody knows the numbers. Nobody knows all of these facts and circumstances better than you. So by writing it yourself, you control the narrative. You show that you're prepared. You help your legal team work efficiently, but it also gives the mediator a very powerful professional document that positions you as the voice of reason. And it has to be short and sweet because nobody's going to read 10, 50 pages of documentation about your life and your situation. Now, I wouldn't pause on creating that larger document, right? And we're going to talk to you at the end about how to get started today and really creating a document that could end up to be 30, 40, 50 pages. But what we want to try to pull it together is in a summary, a 1 to 2 pages, that if that's all that the mediator read or potentially the judge, is it compelling and convincing enough for them to start to realize that you have a very strong position and you have a very strong evidence for your settlement offer, and that the judge would likely side on your offer over the other side? And so that means that we can't include every single detail. We got to kind of keep this big picture, okay? And so that's why we're looking at potentially like the top 3 legal or financial issues. Those are usually going to be the biggest issues. So like a lot of times 2 of your 3 top issues could be the kids and money. It could be the house, like those could be the 3 ones. So you also want to put together a timeline of events, like when you got married, when certain events happened, like for example, um, we met at this date. We moved in together at this date. Then we, maybe had some kids. We finally got married. What is the date of marriage? What are the kids' names? When did things start to go south? What year at least did things start to change? And so you're putting together this kind of very factually based timeline, so you're going to focus on dates, money, and property if there were things that went wrong, if there were outside relationships. And then finally, you're probably going to end up creating something that's going to show like the exhibits. It doesn't mean that you're going to give them the exhibits, but you want them to know that you've created these exhibits that would be evidence for marital waste or evidence of infidelity or evidence of movement of money, right? Evidence that you contributed to the house with separate money, like your parents gave you a gift. All of those things could be an exhibit that you kind of start to document. So when we're again looking at this from a very simple perspective, we're first trying to figure out like what to include in this. And if we go and look, a lot of times you can have ChatGPT actually help you write some of this position statement. It could also maybe analyze your exhibits, identify your top 3 issues, summarize some of the supporting facts, and then build this index. But what is even included in some of those? And again, what we're going to encourage you to do is start by telling your whole case, your whole kind of history, the narrative, from start to finish of when you met until today, right? And so that's going to be in like a voice memo, so that you're just saying all the details that you could possibly imagine. Maybe it's a couple hours long. I don't know. It just depends. But this is going to give all the major events, all the issues that you're concerned about, all of the things that you've started to kind of just ruminate on, and you maybe keep telling all of your team, or you haven't even filed yet and you're trying to figure out how you can do some of these things on your own. And this is going to be your good starting point. So a lot of times there could be maybe financial issues there could be legal issues. And once you dictate that huge long summary, you could feed that transcript back into ChatGPT and say, give me a very concise, unemotional summary based on this narrative. What are the three biggest things that I have created, right? So if you're sticking to this 1 to 2 page situation, you might start with an introduction or history. You might go to the top 3 issues. And if you have evidence to support those issues, you might start with now a financial timeline. So we moved in together, we kept our assets separate, or we combined them in a trust, or my parents gave us money to buy a house. And then you're going to go into a summary of your offer. You're wanting to put forward to the mediator, because again, we're going to use this position statement for a lot of different reasons. But one is to keep your entire team on the same page. 2 is to provide a very succinct narrative about what you want so that it doesn't get lost in translation with your expert and your lawyer. So if you look at that, you might want a summary of the offer, right? You're going to have your spreadsheets that we work through that are going to be the basis of the financial pieces of the offer, but you might want a small narrative of like, I would like to keep the house, or I would like us to sell this, things like that. And then you just want the exhibit list. It's like an index. It's not giving them all the exhibits, but it's giving them enough to kind of choke on a little bit. Like, you're not only prepared, but you also have created these other evidence and pieces of documentation that will support your position. So even just the titles of those will be beneficial. Now, you will end up bringing those exhibits to mediation in order to share them with the mediator if they ask additional questions. Like, they might ask, like, what information do you have that there's marital waste? And then you would want to show them that exhibit that would maybe summarize where there was money here and now the money is gone. So if we look at how you're going to get started today, we're going to do a few things. One is you have voice memos on your phone. And so just pull that out and start telling your story, kind of the raw version of the story, not something that's very scripted, but, when did we meet? When we moved in? What red flags did you see? When did you get married? What was the date? What are your kids' names? Do you own your house? Do you have 2 cars? Do you have any other property? Just start going through everything that you could possibly understand, right? And again, you're going to record it into voice memos, which should be on most phones. And so this is going to also allow you to have a transcript that you can see and download. You're going to take that, download it straight into ChatGPT, and then you're going to say, summarize this story into a factual divorce timeline and list the 3 biggest financial and legal issues. Now, that's going to be a lot easier than you sitting around for hours and hours and trying to create what you think are the issues. Just tell the story, dictate the story. In some chat, and we would recommend that you get the paid version. It's $20 a month right now, but you could also dictate straight into chat. But I'm wondering if your story isn't, 30 minutes, an hour, several hours. So maybe take it in chapters, like start at the beginning and tell as much as you can, and then keep those as voice recordings. And then eventually you're going to run it back through ChatGPT to not only remove the emotion, but also to summarize it, right? Because a lot of times when we have all of these things going around us, we can't even see what the major issues are. And we might think that there's really 10 issues and we can't possibly bring them down to 3, but allow ChatGPT to give you kind of the top 3. If you're concerned about that, ask for the top 5 and you can pick the 3 that you think are the most important. This is going to be how you start to build that position statement. So again, if we're looking at why are we starting with telling a story? Well, the story really holds some of these patterns and facts that we need to build this strategic exit, right? So we need to come up with an entire plan. But at the beginning, if you don't know where to start, just start dictating your story. Allow ChatGPT to kind of come in and create the story with clarity. So, what if you're not even sure if you want to leave yet? Like maybe you're just kind of coming up with kind of next steps or you're doing your research. This is still for you because if you start gathering some of this information, it's going to make you very clear on whether you want to stay, whether you want to consider mediation, or if you want to plan to leave and you're with a toxic spouse and you know it's going to be more difficult. Now, how should you record your story? We suggest voice memos, but again, you could start with any sort of recording advice, but we want to try to get it back into ChatGPT. So again, you can load that or talk to text or talk into your notes, however you want to get it. Most things are then creating you a transcript from that, and then you're going to go put it back into ChatGPT with a prompt. Um, so, what else should you include? Dates, events, red flags, infidelity, money decisions, control, when things change, right? So, you're kind of like all of these signs you may have seen, but it didn't become clear until you have this event that happened, or it's a pivotal point, or you're just tired of it. So, what happens if you start talking and it's like too emotional or too long? It's okay. You're really going to be summarizing it and refining it later. And this is just your version of the truth, right? And so when it's raw, when it's emotional, you get it all out there, you have it recorded. You might be using it in the future to create a story that you could then monetize, but that's okay. What is the goal of this first recording? It's literally just to get that timeline, just to get the major issues, like the specific dates, the financial and legal facts, anything that starts to support your position. Maybe you don't have the evidence yet. Maybe you've just been ruminating about all of these like reasons why you're concerned or reasons why you think that there needs to be a discussion. So, how does this become a legal tool for you? The story is going to shape your position statement. Okay. And then it's going to shape your mediation strategy. And then it's going to shape your settlement offer. And this is going to get to the negotiation strategy. So you can see how it's just a story, but it's really that it's the thing that you know the most. And it's one way to start to gain control of this process. If you can take your story and put it into a position statement that obviously changes over time, right? You create it once and you're going to be morphing it and melding it. And typically you're going to look at two versions of this position statement. One's going to be the concise 1 to 2 pages. The other is going to be the full built out version of it, which is going to have exhibits. It's going to have evidence. It's going to have summaries, right? So, are you going to be sharing this with your attorney? Yes, parts of it, especially if you build your own timeline and you have a divorce position statement and you have a settlement offer. But those are going to be more, I guess, structured pieces of information, right? You don't want to send them a 50-page document that rambles on about all the details of your divorce when they may not care. So you want to give it a little bit more concise, and you certainly are not going to have a mediator or a judge that's going to read 50 pages of narrative about your life. I understand that it's super important to you, but in order for it to be very valuable in the process, we need to pull it down to a little bit more clarified summaries. So, what if you're afraid that somebody is watching your phone or could get access to this? And that could be a very relevant thing. You can also buy like a handheld recorder. You could also be dictating into Word or some other document that then you save on a platform where that is secure. You might want to consider getting a new phone, a new email address, a new account so that you can have this all stored into a secure folder that we utilize ShareFile or Bubble Up in order to save those files and get them off of your phone if you're concerned that somebody might grab your phone or look at it whenever they're in your presence. So you're going to be using it to build the written summaries, but you're not necessarily going to be sending it to people directly. So what happens next? You start to tell your story, right? And so we think that you could start now and writing this story and not even writing it, but kind of just telling it in order to use ChatGPT to build it. And this is going to be a summary statement that you're not only going to guide your team, but you're going to also provide it eventually to the mediator. And the full version could have all the details, right? And so you could ask ChatGPT to also give you a fuller version that gives the 10 top points and then allows you to see what the evidence that you either need to gain to prove your claim or the evidence that you currently have that's going to support your position. You may also want to ask it about the legal process or what you have in that form, but you have to be mindful that sometimes it will hallucinate or it could give you answers that you need to make sure that you vet as well. So this is really a way to use it and cultivate the story that you're creating. So that's a little different process. Um, what else do you need to know? I think that this will get you started in understanding what is necessary for us to move forward in an offer. It gives you some control, and I want you to start soon, maybe even tomorrow, because what we're going to be doing in the full workshop is walking through what this actually looks like. Like, can we give you some ideas or some samples? And that's going to be available live in the Divorce Allies community, and that's going to require you to be a member. And so we're going to be meeting on Monday at 10 a.m. Central, and we're going to go through this. So this is just kind of your weekend homework, and maybe you can start dictating your story and run it through ChatGPT and see what happens, right? And maybe it gives you some ideas and you can run with it. Go down the rabbit hole a little bit and start to get really clear on the top issues that are going to be important for your case, that are going to be important for you to focus on, that move the needle either financially or for custody or for you to acquire assets that are beneficial to you. So then in the workshop, we're going to go through how to actually cultivate it and how we can make it even more powerful so that it will be used not only to direct your team, but if you haven't gotten started, this is going to be a great way to get all of your team members on the same page at the very beginning. Like, what would happen if you brought this summary to an initial meeting with an expert or a lawyer? They're going to be pretty happy because they're going to know that you have kind of put it together. You're not frazzled. You're not going in 100 different directions. This will help you center a little bit and get your mindset on the fact that you're leading this negotiation team and we need you to be prepared. We also need you to get that story out and get some of the emotion out, which is going to help you then kind of now focus on what moves the needle. So join us in the circle to ask all of your questions and to get some more examples of what this looks like and how you can start building out your settlement offer. So the rest of the month, we're actually going to cover a couple other topics like developing your settlement offer, like getting through discovery and depositions and hearings and what to expect. But also, how are you going to finish this case, right? And is a post-nup going to be an option if you don't want to get divorced right now? Okay. So we might also cover some prenups so that if you decide you want to get married in the future. But again, for today, I think we just want to focus on how do we get our story out there? How does it start to become our position statement? And how does it start to lead into the settlement offer? So it gets everybody very clear. And then remember, every time they meet with you and they don't remember your case, they can revert back to that position statement and be right there with you, efficient, effective, and you can have meetings that really get things done. So join us again on Monday and we'll be answering your questions. And if you have any other ideas of topics that you would love to have covered in our podcast, please let us know and join our YouTube channel as well.